This episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks is brought to you by Gigabyte's AMD X570 ARS motherboards for third-generation AMD Ryzen 3000 processors. Hit the link in the description below for more details. In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, we're going to have Surfaces, we're going to have Radeons, we're going to have Ryzens, we're going to have big Navis and big Amperes and lots of stuff. Next. Welcome back to another episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks. Good to see y'all. I'm Dave Altavilla, and with me, as always, is Marco Chiappetta. We just have one other geek today, so we're going to be we two geeks today. Marco, can you handle that burden, my friend?
I will do my best. I'm not sure I can handle it, but we'll see how it goes.
I think you can. I have faith. I have faith in you. So, how's it going? I sense that we're a little frayed today. I'm feeling a little frayed. Not afraid, but frayed.
Like, you know, it started out a good day. I was productive, and the middle of the day got away from me, and I am mid-project right now, and some other stuff that caused me to just get online just in time for the cast, but I made it, and that's all that counts.
You tend to be skin of your teeth timing when you join us with the cast. So we don't expect anything less from you than in like the wind.
It's smart. That's smart of you.
It's efficient is what it is. You don't waste any time with the setup. You just like bang, you parachute in and then we talk tech. Chris and Brittany are in the background there. They are manning the boards, as it were, on the production side of things, but they're not going to be joining us much today. Brittany a little bit under the weather. Chris just playing the man behind the curtain. We may scare him out of that curtain once or twice just to torture him somewhat. But yeah, for me, for us this week, it's just me and you, and hopefully that's good enough for everybody, right?
So.
God dang it. Think of something funny or insulting to say to me, will you please? This is way too like dead air right now. You need to offend me, and then I'll feel like away we go.
I'm sure that you'll make a comment and set me up, and I won't be able to hold back. So just have faith. You'll be okay.
Ye have little faith. Yes. Yeah. So we're just back from the CES runaround, not too recently, but the week before last, and still playing some catch up though. Lots of goings on in the land of tech. It seems like CES sort of tees it up, and then we have a lot to talk about in the rumor mill, which is what we'll get to today a little bit. But we also have some straight up launches that have been set afoot right out of the gate after CES, which was nice. Folks at AMD will be getting to that in the GPU space. But before we do, let's talk the more mobile side of technology and talk about article that our good friend Ben Funk, Bring Me the Funk, Ben Funk put together. Ben, by the way, formerly with the Tech Report, is now with the Hot Hardware and doing some great work for us, with us. And but yeah, he took a look at the Microsoft Surface Pro X and the Microsoft Surface Pro 7. And one is powered by Snapdragon, Qualcomm mobile processor platform, and one is powered by Intel's Ice Lake quad-core Ice Lake chip. So two very different platforms for likely two very different experiences. Marco, quick takes on this, and then we'll dive into some of the trials and tribulations, shall we say.
Let's do it. So yeah, this Ben definitely brings the funk. This was a really interesting article for a couple of reasons. So if you're not on top of what's happening in the Microsoft Surface Pro space, the Surface Pro X has sort of an updated design, some nicer curves, some additional connectivity, but it's powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon, so really Windows on ARM. And Microsoft also updated the traditional Surface Pro to the Surface Pro 7. So Ben compared the Surface Pro X with the Snapdragon-based ARM processor inside versus a Core i5-based Surface Pro 7, which actually has a base price a little less. I mean, you might be thinking, oh, a Core i5 versus an ARM processor, not fair, but the Surface Pro 7 starts at $750 with the Core i5 in it, and the Surface Pro X is grand, it's $999. So through general usage, both machines offer a really good experience. Microsoft has done a really nice job refining the Surface series. So using the machines, tooling around Windows, or running native apps on either platform, they both work really well. They're both nice and snappy. Where things kind of get interesting is where you look at app compatibility and battery life. So Windows on ARM will run lots of x86 apps in emulation, but 64-bit apps don't run. So lots of 32-bit Win32 apps will run under emulation. That takes a toll on performance, but you can run those apps. 64-bit apps, however, won't run. But what the platform does exceptionally well is offer really strong battery life. So let me just jump to our battery life page here. In the test that we ran, which basically loops a video nonstop, let me just see what the number was. So the Surface Pro X offered up close to, what was that, 13 hours, Dave? 735 minutes?
Yeah.
So that's insane. So literally screen on, not shutting off, playing a video nonstop. That screen is lit up the entire time, 13 hours. And if you look at the Surface Pro 7 doing the same test, it did 368 minutes. So, about half. But the plus with the Core i5 based Surface Pro is basically better performance across the board in the ways we were able to test. And obviously you get that full app compatibility with whatever you want to run.
Right. And, let's face it too, the platform that Microsoft went with for Surface Pro 7 is Intel's latest 10th generation 10 nanometer Ice Lake processor. It's quad core. It's got nice Gen 11 graphics. It's a really well balanced machine. Now, admittedly, it's in a TDP down configuration because this is a fanless design. But it's a well balanced machine. It's a powerful machine, especially for the thin and light form factor that it takes. But what's interesting is you would have thought Microsoft would have approached this slightly differently than they did with the configuration. So, for example, obviously the Snapdragon platform is going to, currently at least, have some limitations relative to running different types of apps. And so it's a little bit more niche in its, I guess it's perhaps its targeting of the market right now, because there's a certain set of users that are going to tolerate that. These are office productivity types. You can do a ton on it, but if you're going to dig into, Adobe Premiere and content creation, those 64-bit apps aren't going to run. The flip side of that is, as you mentioned, Marco, you get a ton of battery life. But what they did was they configured a larger, higher-end display on the Snapdragon platform, on the Surface Pro X, and a lower resolution, smaller display, 12-inch form factor on the Surface Pro 7. And so it's almost like they could have made some trade-offs for cost to get the Snapdragon platform Surface Pro X into a better price point for its current capabilities. It's got room to grow as the app ecosystem grows for Windows on ARM. But didn't that occur to you too? Like, why don't we have the higher end config on the Surface Pro 7 and maybe the lower cost config? It's still a nice monitor. It's a high res display on the Surface Pro 7. Why not make that the Surface Pro X, right?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what Microsoft was thinking. I get them wanting to make the Surface Pro X premium through and through.
Yep.
And if you're a user that spends all of your time running Office or browsing, you'll love the Surface Pro X. I mean, that thing is just not going to die on you. It's going to last for days. Like, you can, if you were just tooling around on the web and in Office, would not be surprised if you went greater than 2 full work days with this thing. If you got 13 hours nonstop playing video, you can easily double that, with screen off time, yada, yada, yada. So it would be really nice to have the option to have the Intel platform in that same form factor and that same design language. Not quite sure why Microsoft did it. I think it was to offer some differentiation for this initial launch and to clearly have 2 separate products, because right now they do behave somewhat differently. So it's probably best to have some delineation there.
Yeah.
But it will probably all converge at some point.
I mean, because that's the out of the gate, all I was thinking of is out of the gate. That's the thought people have is, okay, this is a machine, and they've got some deals on it now, so that it's approaching more like $800. But this is $1,000 machine, Windows on ARM. I want to be able to run everything on a machine of that price point. Why wouldn't you make it a little bit lower cost machine? Maybe it's a $700 machine or something like that. But you make a good point relative to battery life and the vast majority of what most folks will do on a notebook. This thing actually is pretty rocking. And Craig Dieter asks a comment in the chat. He says, "Would you consider it's a better experience than WinRT was?" I've played around with it. I would say absolutely. It's like night and day versus WinRT. This is full Windows 10 on ARM, right, Marco?
Yeah, I mean, I still, believe it or not, Craig, I still, and there's another question we'll get to from Chronic also. I still travel with a Surface 2.
You do?
Well, I leave it in my laptop bag, and it's just for movies when I travel. And like I treat it like a spare machine. God forbid, like I break my notebook while I'm traveling, I have something I can still email from, what have you. And the only reason I keep it is because the battery lasts forever playing video. I did, a direct flight from New York JFK to Honolulu, watched movies the entire time, still had battery life left when I got there. And, I don't have to worry about my laptop dying if I'm going to work on that at the same time. So I like having a little small portable device, but in terms of the experience, night and day. I mean, the Surface Pro X, if you're not trying to run apps that aren't designed for the platform, you wouldn't know the difference between it and a regular, Intel-based Windows 10 machine. Whereas Windows RT, it had like funky interface, literally nothing worked unless it came from the Windows Store. So totally night and day difference. And then, this is kind of a good segue. Chronic's asking our thoughts on Tiger Lake U. Now, since we're talking mobile, and today some performance numbers did leak on Tiger Lake U, and we had some inkling of what Intel's got going on based on some stuff at CES and previous conversations. Tough to say. Rumors have it that Tiger Lake U is going to have some killer IPC improvements. It's going to offer some strong single-threaded improvements. What that means for multi-threaded performance and where clocks are going to land, who knows? Not quite sure yet. The scuttlebutt is Tiger Lake U is strong, but we got to see. And Intel's got to make them. It's got to bring them to market.
Yeah, actually, Chris, get that off the screen. We're going to come back to that when we get to. I want to tee that up. Actually, that's a good segue for the next section where we'll talk about Ryzen Mobile. But just to shift gears back to the Surface Pro X and Windows on ARM. Marco, you have a bone to pick with Microsoft. I know you do, and I share that same consternation, I guess, and that is that if Microsoft would have only, and it's easier said than done, of course, enabled 64-bit emulation so that people could run a larger majority of available apps, through emulation, granted with lower performance, it would have resulted in a lot more complete an experience out of the gate. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, what strikes me is you have the Surface Pro X, which is literally designed to look and feel like a premium device through and through. If you see it in a store and you look at it, you're gonna, if you're looking for that type of device, you're going to love it. And then you get it home, and the experience is marred because Microsoft is willing to compromise on compatibility and introduce this weirdness with emulation, and it just sours users. Microsoft loves to do stuff like this. I don't understand it, and it wasn't a good move. They shouldn't have pushed this forward until it was fully ready, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, I will applaud them, and this is the damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario. I applaud them for leading the charge with a Surface product based on Qualcomm Snapdragon. They want to define a new product category for Windows on ARM and what they feel is the best hardware instantiation of that. And so there's, again, they're trying to blaze a trail, which is great, and hopefully some of the other OEMs will follow. But yeah, the OS side of it, please get that operating system a little bit more compatible with a wider swath of apps, and the way to do that initially is through emulation and get it there. So It's an interesting thing. It's a catch-22 for sure. That's an interesting caption that Ben took. Looking for you is Windows Hello. This is the Windows Hello prompt, or is it Surface Pro X looking for compatible apps? I think you would be surprised on what is compatible in terms of what you do on a mobile, ultra mobile device like this in the day-to-day. But yeah, if you're doing content creation, this isn't the machine for you right now. Hopefully this ecosystem evolves and Microsoft really gets behind it, puts their money where their mouth is. And, some of the other, major OS developers get on train as well. It's folks like Adobe and Slack and all these third-party apps. Dropbox, I heard, has limited compatibility. These are sort of essential tools that need to be there. As native clients. So hopefully that happens, right?
Absolutely. I think there's everyone would love a device that just lasts forever on battery and does what they want. So
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not going to compete. If you look at the benchmarks in our review, please hit the website, HotHardware.com, and check out Ben's review on the Microsoft Surface Pro X versus Surface Pro 7. The performance numbers they're apples and oranges. One's a super ultra light that lasts forever, and the other one's traditional Intel quad-core mobile performance. But it's very capable for the vast majority of daily use cases for a machine of this size and form factor. So interesting stuff for sure. All right. Do we want to stay on the mobile train and then switch to Radeon RX 5600 XT, and so go to what the folks at AMD are doing in the mobile space? Does that make
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's do that because this is an interesting segue for Chronic Sinner Z. I love that handle. Who commented in the chat. We'll address his question about Tiger Lake, but at CES, AMD, of course, came out with Ryzen 4000 series mobile processors, and that was a big announcement with some bold claims in both even single-threaded performance, where Intel has typically been stronger, but certainly multi-threaded performance when you talk about 8-core Ryzen chips. Fresh leaks have hit the interwebs. There are a couple of them, the 4700U, which is that typical 15-watt TDP that you see in so many Ultrabooks on the Intel side of the house, or competitive with that. The Ryzen 7 4700U broke cover, and the Ryzen 7 4700H, which is a little bit higher end TDP for more of a gaming class notebook, hit the interwebs as well in a leak, where they're starting to show up now in places like Geekbench and some of these tools that have databases online, 3D Mark. And the numbers are encouraging, right, Marco?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it was today where the 48, so a 3D Mark Time Spy CPU benchmark leaked. Now, again, it's a leak, could be fake. It looks legit based on what we saw at CES and some of the numbers AMD's released. But the Ryzen 7 4800H mobile processor scored about 8352 in the 3D Mark Time Spy CPU benchmark, so the physics benchmark that is multi-threaded and leverages just the CPU. That basically puts it ahead of a Core i7 desktop processor, Core i7 9700K. And look, let me just double check. Yeah, it's ahead of a Core i7 10750H mobile processor, and a hair behind the massive Core i9 9980HK. So, I mean, if this is a legit number for a lower power processor than the Core i9, you have some significant CPU performance. Now, is that as significant for games? Maybe not as much. This is a game-centric benchmark, but for multi-threaded workloads, that bodes really, really well. And that we're hearing good things about Ryzen Mobile. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. No, the numbers look impressive, and when you look at certainly the multi-threaded stuff, where AMD has always been strong, but they have seemingly closed the gap on, I would say, from what these leaks show, it's seemingly closed the gap on current generation Intel platform stuff. Maybe not quite Ice Lake, but pretty close in terms of IPC throughput, general IPC throughput. But yeah, impressive stuff. And the 4800 the Ryzen 7 4800H, our headline was that it showed desktop class performance and punch for laptops. I mean, yeah, it's just when you think about a mobile CPU comparing with an 8-core desktop chip, and that's what AMD claimed. It's impressive. It's really impressive. So yeah, versus the 9700K, slightly faster. Good stuff. Bring it AMD, make it real, get it to market, and it'll be well received if these early numbers are what reality turns out to be. And then to circle back on Chronic Sinner, his question, Marco, Tiger Lake U, I'm going to put this story up in the chat right now. We actually had a story cross the wire today after we sent down the rundown for the podcast. And Tiger Lake U busts out in killer single thread and strong multi-thread performance in Benchmark Leak. So what you're seeing here is a very quick and dirty Geekbench 5, but we actually have some internal numbers with Geekbench 5 that we can compare it to. And what you're seeing here is this is a quad-core processor, obviously, so it's 4 cores, 8 threads. It's not going to compete with an 8-core or 6-core chip. But look at the single-threaded performance, significantly faster than 10th gen, Intel 10th gen Ice Lake, to the tune of, I guess it's something like, do some quick math, maybe 15%. So nice IPC boost there. And then when you look at another quad-core chip, the 1065G, which is Intel's 10th gen quad-core processor, Ice Lake, that in multi-core, it's slightly ahead of that as well. So maybe to the tune of, it looks like about 10%. So really a nice lift with Tiger Lake U. If this benchmark is real, it's not some sort of fake. We actually hit the Geekbench database and looked for it and found it. So it's in there, for what it's worth. Thoughts on that, Marco? Impressive stuff.
So that's in line with, assuming it's an engineering sample, it's not going to be clocked as high as it will be when it hits retail. And, the scuttlebutt is really strong IPC improvements. So, yeah, that makes sense. It makes sense that the single thread test would show a nice boost. Multi-thread should scale properly. Intel is working on improving multi-threaded scaling as well. So if the rumors are true, things are lining up really, really well for Tiger Lake U. But like I said earlier, Intel's got to make them and bring them out. They gotta start executing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ice Lake, I think, is when you look at that platform in Gen 11 graphics, it's very competitive. It's going to remain to be seen how the market reacts to Ryzen 4000 series mobile, and what the OEMs do with the platforms, what they configure for notebooks. What we saw some previews at CES, there's some impressive stuff going on. We saw some nice offerings from ASUS, for example, and I think Lenovo had one in their suite as well. And these are Ryzen 4000 series laptops, and so I think that's going to be the devil in the details. What's the total experience? What's the total platform look like in terms of performance and quality versus, frankly, Intel's very entrenched, very dominant and established mobile processing platform that's been out in Ultrabooks since we can't remember when. They've just owned that space for so long. What's interesting is how AMD has absolutely gotten a foothold now in the desktop and is taking market share from Intel in the desktop, certainly with the DIY crowd, of course. If they are able to break into the mobile space in a significant way and get, they claimed hundreds, quote unquote, of OEM design wins for notebooks. That's going to be a huge feather in their cap. If they can get some significant Intel mobile, notebook and laptop market share, it's going to be like, wow, I'm going to be impressed. Well, we'll see. We'll see when it happens, if it happens. But certainly seems like the silicon's lined up to do it, right, Marco?
Yeah, it absolutely is. We saw some good stuff. That Asus notebook was gorgeous. Craig says sounds like it's going to be a great year for mobile. Total rumor, speculation, could have totally been a typo, but we also saw something. Somebody at CES mentioned a Ryzen 9 4900 that never materialized. It never materialized anywhere.
Remember that.
But we saw a placard that said, hey, this machine has a Ryzen 9 4900. So I asked AMD about it and got hey, we don't comment on unannounced products. But that would be interesting if something like that's out there too. So we'll see what happens this year. Lots of stuff going on.
Interesting you mentioned that. That was a very interesting observation at CES. We were standing in a suite to be unnamed, right? And yeah, there was this placard with a Ryzen 9 mobile processor notated on it with I think it was 4900 of some sort. And people were like, I think so. I don't know. We asked this OEM, what this was all about, and they couldn't tell us much. And then we asked AMD, and they said, actually, they didn't say we can't comment on unannounced product. They said, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, because it's, I think you tried to push them on. Is there a higher end SKU coming than what we've seen? Because we heard about this, and they're like, we can't comment about unannounced product, and I don't know what that is. But yeah, that was an interesting little find out there, and I wonder how quickly that got covered up because I didn't see it breaking out. Like we should have taken a picture of that. Would have been a nice, quasi leak. Who knows? Maybe it was just a typo. Maybe somebody was typing up a placard and fat fingered a couple of wrong keys, but there's you got to believe there's more to come. There's bigger and better. Certainly there is in the desktop space and likely as well in the mobile space. So stay tuned. Should be fun to watch. Notebooks are just getting better and better every day. Tiger Lake U is looking fantastic from the leaks, and then, of course, what AMD is thumping these days, announcing from the mountaintops at CES is looking impressive as well. All right, let's stay on the AMD vein, and let's talk GPUs because you just got through absolutely putting the screws to the AMD Radeon RX 5600 XT, a top-notch 1080p gaming GPU is what we deemed it. And why do you feel that, young Marco?
I feel that because it's a killer 1080p GPU. So yeah, the 5600 XT, AMD announced it at CES, and they announced it with a certain set of specs or recommended reference specifications. And since CES, those specs have changed, or at least AMD's partners decided to release new BIOS updates for the cards to unleash lots more performance. Now, when the card was originally announced, AMD positioned it against 1660 Super and 1660 Ti class cards. But lo and behold, NVIDIA dropped the price on the 2060. There was also some new introductions at CES, like the EVGA GeForce RTX 2060 KO, which is a sub $300 2060. So now all of a sudden the 5600 XT had a different competitor that was within striking distance of price, and bang, the BIOS updates come, and now the 5600 XT can offer more performance. Now, I kind of get the feeling that AMD's being conservative on purpose so they can maneuver like this. Either that or whatever would have been the 5650 down the line just got nixed because those specs are now kind of happening here. But so 5600 XT, what it essentially is a 5700. So not a 5700 XT. It's the same Navi 10 GPU, but it's configured with this similar number of processors as a 5700. So 2304 stream processors. But the memory interface is cut back to 192 bits. And because those two memory channels are gone, two memory chips are gone as well. So a 6 gig frame buffer instead of an 8 gig frame buffer. Now, with really fast memory on here, so with 14 gigabit per second effective memory, and boost clocks in the high 1700, 1.7 gigahertz range, 1700 megahertz range, we put it through its paces, and it basically skunks a 1660 in everything except like one VR workload where NVIDIA is really strong in some VR tests. And versus a RTX 2060, it wins more often than not. The RTX 2060 pulls ahead in VR workloads as well, in Final Fantasy, which is a very strongly NVIDIA optimized title. And I think one more game at 1440, I don't remember exactly, but if you look through the article, you can see all those numbers. And for 1080p gaming, I should also mention that the 5600 XT consumed less power than an RTX 2060. So power and thermals are good. Performance, very competitive, if you can easily say faster than an RTX 2060. $289 price point for this custom Sapphire card we tested. Technically $279 MSRP, but most of the partner boards are going to be priced more. Some are even in the mid 300 range, which is too high for this class of card. But, for $289, the Sapphire Pulse we tested was cool, quiet, overclocked really well, power was good, and performance was strong. Basically, any game, 1080p, max details, it's going to be smooth. And that was without enabling stuff like Radeon Boost, which is available in AMD's drivers that could further optimize performance in some titles. So really strong card overall.
Yeah, and that's an interesting note you just made. When you talk about 1080p gaming and folks that are looking hopefully for higher frame rates in some cases, you can enable things like Radeon Boost and get more performance, and with minimal sacrifice elsewhere in terms of image quality or what have you. So there's performance in the can. But what was impressive to me about this thing was that you've got a card now that it seems to be generally more efficient. It's lower price, call it $20 to $30 less than an RTX 2060, about on par with an RTX 2060 in terms of performance, trading blows, and lower power. And so to get similar performance, you're talking about a card that's generally more efficient from a cost and performance per watt standpoint. So that's great. What are your thoughts about, honestly, the elephant in the room is what folks feel about, ray tracing and the image quality that it brings and the additional features that you can turn on in a currently limited but not small number of game titles. There's some pretty cool AAA games, Call of Duty. You can go on the list that now supports ray tracing. Is this card, for its price point, I guess, better optimized? Like, are folks? Obviously, a 2060 will play games with ray tracing turned on and have satisfying frame rate. Is this card maybe just a better deal and all around currently because of the price point and the performance and the power efficiency, or is ray tracing a big missing checkbox?
Tough to say. So NVIDIA deserves all the credit in the world, whether you're a fanboy or not, for pioneering ray tracing on the real-time ray tracing on the desktop and dedicating hardware resources to accelerating ray tracing and working with game devs to bring it to basically the top game engines and a bunch of AAA games. So, it's not as widespread, I think, as NVIDIA would want it to be, but NVIDIA deserves tons of credit. I think today, most gamers are willing to sacrifice ray tracing support for a card that they perceive as having a good value and good performance in the majority of games they run. And in that vein, 5600 XT is an awesome card. Definitely an awesome card. Now, what happens with ray tracing in the future is the big question. And what we're hearing is, when AMD has ray tracing on desktop PCs, it may not be exactly what NVIDIA is doing. So things are either going to diverge. Things are going to standardize just on, Microsoft's API. I don't know how this is going to play out with game developers. So down the line, where the game devs go is really where it's going to decide. Today, since it's a small group of games, you can get away with not having ray tracing support. Maybe you regret it sooner rather than later, though. Looking into my crystal ball, I think by the time the 5600 XT, people will be looking to upgrade. I think you'll still be okay a couple of years down the road. So I don't think it's a huge deal at this moment. But I don't want to take away from NVIDIA's accomplishment. I think ray tracing's cool, makes games look good. You know, that it was not an easy thing to do, and they did it anyway. And you know, it's just not as widespread, and it wasn't as widely adopted by gamers and game developers, I think, than NVIDIA would have wanted.
Right. I would agree with you. And I think, number one, you have to applaud the innovation. You have to applaud them coming to market with that. I think when you talk about price points and, product segments, mid-range, low-end, entry-level graphics cards, what have you, this is more mid-range, $300 or sub $300 graphics card. You can make the case that ray tracing is probably less important at that price point because, performance, although playable, isn't going to be completely optimal across the board, certainly versus a high-end card. When you get into a higher-end SKUs like an RTX 2080 price point or an RTX 2070 price point, now you're talking about, okay, I got a higher-end system. I'm spending more money on my GPU. I want that feature because if I'm dropping this kind of coin, I want all the bells and whistles. Why not flip them on? Yep. So you can logically say that makes sense. In the mid-range and the lower end, where folks are sort of, you're on a budget and you may not want to drop that kind of coin on a GPU. Yeah, you could see getting by without it. It's really what can you justify? What's your use case and what can you justify in terms of your performance expectation and your IQ, your image quality expectations. But yeah, no, I mean, good stuff from AMD. What occurred to me in this launch, as you noted, Marco, was that there was obviously some jockeying between the two teams, the red team and the green team, in terms of performance and price points. And it's great to see the tooth and nail combat, right? But what occurred to me is that AMD is a little bit, or maybe not so little bit, more strategic these days in their go-to-market strategy. First, we had the whole big debated thing, right, on the initial launch of Navi, and it was just an interesting dynamic where they adjusted some price points and reacted. Now we have this kicker BIOS, last minute BIOS update that says, oh, by the way, 5600 XT just got some more performance because we're reacting to this price point drop. It seems to me like the AMD of old didn't have this sort of nimble, reactionary guerrilla warfare almost sort of tactic, and I like it. I like that it's because it's bringing better offerings to the market, right? What are your thoughts about that? It was just impressive to not impressive, but just interesting to watch. Like, okay, cool, we're going to duke it out. Why not? We're all going to benefit.
Yeah. So I have a couple of opinions there, but I want to answer a quick question that Jackie Chan just wrote. He said, why have a 5600 XT if they have a 5700? So 5700 has 8 gig. It is faster. It's going to age better for 1440p gaming. But if you're gaming at 1080p, you're right. Like, you really should get the 5600 XT versus 5700. If you're a 1440p gamer, that extra 2 gigs of memory is going to age much better down the line. Plus, it is a faster card. So yeah, that's why the 5700 is going to remain. But back to your point, Dave, what I found funny at CES, and I didn't think of it because this was before the BIOS stuff, a bunch of the AMD folks were going, I wonder what the response is going to be. and now that I think, it was sort of like, they obviously probably knew, had an inkling what was going to happen, because all of a sudden the 5600 XT went from a 1660 competitor to arguably, I mean, it's faster than a RTX 2060. So yeah, to go from 12 gigabit per second memory to 14 gigabit per second memory with, it was on the card already. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they were conservative with that spec, and that's a conscious decision that was made to be conservative with that spec. They were conservative with the clocks because it was, I mean, I guess I can say this. I wasn't told not to say it. When I had already finished testing with the early BIOS, I had a full set of numbers. I jumped on the card the second I had it in my hand, had a full set of numbers, and then a few days later, sorry, you have to scrap those numbers. There's a new BIOS. It really changed the profile of the card. It was a different card after the BIOS updates. So, but power didn't change all that much, to be honest, though. Like, the power was only slightly. So AMD was really conservative with that initial spec. They could have done more. So it was just, I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was reactionary or what, but I think they absolutely are being way more strategic with the launches, because they need to also be able to react quickly.
That's an interesting observation you made about power. And when you talk about power is the ultimate be-all, tell-all of how much, what am I trying to think of here? How forgiving or how much headroom they have in the can for a specific product. If the power consumption doesn't change much when you amp it up, when you drop in that new firmware that overclocks it, that takes it up a notch on memory interface or core interface, if the power targets don't change much, they're not pushing the envelope to get that extra performance out of the can. When you get a product in and you measure it, and the power does spikes through the roof when you tweak the clocks and the speeds and feeds a little bit, that, okay, man, they kind of wrung this thing out optimally, and we're now getting into the short strokes. There's not a lot of upside, because we're just this thing's crowbarring now. It's just absolutely tanking the power. So yeah, the fact that when they dropped that firmware in and power didn't change a whole lot, but look, we got what is it? What was it, 10% or something like that? I don't know if you can quantify it off the cuff, but that's tell all. That's strategy, is what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting stuff. And and that's what strikes me. I wonder where it comes from. Is it Dr. Lisa Su right at the top who's saying, no, let's feel this out first and see how it rolls, or is it more product line management? I mean, Scott Herkelman and the folks in Radeon Graphics, I mean, there's some sharp folks there now, and they've been around the track in other places before, and they're pretty sharp folks. So maybe they're the ones that are you've only got so many tools in the bag when you're talking about a mid-range card and then the 5500 before that, and what they have to offer right now. They're not going to take on NVIDIA in the high end
yet.
So why not just just pull out the sharpest little knife you got?
Yeah. So it's Scott and one other person that I'm not sure would want to be named that I think are masterminding some of this stuff.
Yes. I know who you're talking about. And we'll leave him nameless as well, because he's a pretty low-key individual, which is great. Humble sort of warrior. Cool stuff. Well, let's move on, and we'll stay in the AMD thing and then transition to NVIDIA in a similar vein, and talk about AMD CEO Lisa Su again confirming Radeon Big Navi will launch this year. The big gun, the big Navi, if you will. So the larger instantiation of the Navi architecture with more cores, faster speeds and feeds, theoretically is what she's talking about when she says big Navi. So Marco, I think when the first Navi card, I'm trying to remember, when 5700 came out, that was the first thing, that I think that came top of mind to you was, hey, this is a cool, upper mid-range card. They must be able to just make this thing bigger, right? And so Lisa Su, Dr. Lisa Su, AMD CEO, is saying, yes, we will make it bigger this year.
That was exactly it. When we had Scott Herkelman on talking about the 5700, and just the die is small, relatively speaking. I'm off the top of my head, I think it's 251 square millimeters, something like that. But that 5700 XT competes with 2070 Super, 2080, original 2080 class cards. So NVIDIA's got the 2080 Super and 2080 Ti that are faster. So just that really, and the monstrous Titan at the very top. But You're talking about a die that's, fractional size of NVIDIA's. So even without changing architecture, without doing anything nuts, AMD could have scaled up, the processing power, scaled up the memory interface a little bit, and probably competed with 2080 Ti. Now, the rumors that have all hit, there's a couple of benchmark leaks recently, are showing a mysterious AMD big GPU, the Halo product, beating 2080 Ti. I think that's totally possible. If let's say AMD is being aggressive and they go 2x the size of 5700, you're talking a really powerful chip. I don't think that's going to be what happens, because the rumor is there will be ray tracing and some new features and some new stuff coming when this big chip comes. But I totally see them with, because we have to disregard ray tracing because we're not sure how that's going to go. But in traditional titles now, I totally think they could scale up the existing Navi architecture with RDNA and compete with NVIDIA's current gen larger GPUs. Now, NVIDIA stuff has been out for a while now, so don't think all of a sudden NVIDIA's dead, because they obviously have future stuff coming probably sooner rather than later as well. But versus existing Turing-based GPUs, I think AMD will be able to compete.
Yeah. So, and there's some interesting rumblings in the tea leaves. I think there was a leak, an alleged leak of big Navi beating 2080 Ti or something like that. And I take that with a grain of salt. But what really sort of, I'm going to drop this into the chat right now. What really sort of is a leading indicator for me is where the fabs are at. They're fab partners, the silicon fab partners for AMD. AMD Zen, I just dropped a link in the chat. AMD 7nm Zen and Navi TSMC orders to double in 2H 2020, so second half 2020. Apple's 5nm 14A Bionic on track. Apple's mobile processor is an afterthought there on that, or an after message on that headline. But yeah, so AMD's supposedly, what we're hearing in the channel is that they're doubling their silicon orders with TSMC as a major fab partner, and so that tells me, yeah, there's some extra SKUs coming on board here, and they're planning to ramp up. And when you think about how this thing came to market, I mean, NVIDIA's not at 7nm yet. 7nm is no joke when it comes to semiconductor process fabrication technology. The die geometry is bleeding edge. I don't care if you can debate me about the difference between Intel's 10nm and TSMC's 7nm. It's still bleeding edge. When you talk about GPUs, the architecture is a big honking die, relatively speaking, to a CPU. It's very parallel. It's a big, large chunk of silicon. When you get to something the size of, for example, an RTX 2080, or in this case, what we would project to be big Navi, that is no joke in 7nm. It's one thing to take, smaller chips and the defect density per wafer on those smaller chips is better because they can carve it up more, right? You think about 7nm and how small the die geometry is. When it's a smaller die, you can carve up the wafer more and have less yield loss, because you can avoid the lost chips easier. You have smaller chunks of silicon. When you talk about a big, fat, honking GPU in 7nm with very tight die geometry like that, you have to mitigate yield in the high end. So it's a challenge for the bigger the chip, the more challenge in terms of yield loss it is when you get to these bleeding edge geometries, die geometries in process. And that's obviously, I think, what we're dealing with here. Sure, AMD's coming out with some pretty optimized mid-range and entry-level Navi-based offerings now, taking a little bit more time for the process side of it to mature. And then we'll see that, hopefully bear fruit here in the second half of 2020 with some big honk and big Navi. Sounds like fun, right?
Absolutely. I am looking forward to it.
And then if we shift gears to NVIDIA, and then we'll close out here. The rumor now is we're going to have some sort of NVIDIA, tease at GTC, which I believe is in March, GPU Technology Conference. And then we have a leak out the other day, this was Monday, rumored NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070, RTX 3080, 7nm Ampere GPU specs leak. So I didn't dig into this news story, but we're getting details of the first what is allegedly the first consumer cards for NVIDIA's next generation Ampere GPU, the follow-on to RTX 2080, and the 2000 series, so the 3000 series follow-on. And we've heard also rumors that we might hear something at GTC about Ampere cards. And usually the way NVIDIA does it is they announce the, data center, or at least the Quadro variant first, the workstation professional variant first, the higher end, more expensive GPU SKUs, and then, they let loose with the consumer stuff later. Thoughts on this, Marco? And oh my goodness, can you imagine with the performance of an RTX 2080 what a 3080 Ampere GPU might perform like?
Yeah, so I don't know about the leak. There's some stuff in the leak that I think's kind of questionable, but in talking with some board partners at CES, people are excited about Ampere. And I forget the exact phrase one of the big guys used, but it was, something along the lines like big things coming, and 4K, everything cranked up smooth is going to be reality with Ampere. So hopefully that's true. We'll see. I have a strong feeling that Turing was first gen effort for all of the the built-in ray tracing, hardware accelerated ray tracing. It's NVIDIA's first gen part, and it's pretty rocking. NVIDIA is typically really strong on those follow-up parts. They analyze the existing stuff, tweak and tune things, and not only will there be architectural improvements, whatever improvements come from migrating to 7 nanometer as well, it's probably going to be really strong. I'm really looking forward to it. So, yeah, I think whether or not the leak is correct, the expectation for Ampere is high, just based on NVIDIA's track record and basically how much time they've had to work on it. They're kicking butt. They've been kicking butt at the high end for a long time. So, I think they're tuning things really well, and Ampere is going to make a big splash.
Nice. Yeah, no, agreed. It'll be interesting to watch. We'll have to see. And the timing of it's going to be key. Can AMD get out Big Navi in time to head off, preemptive strike before Ampere hits in full force? It's going to be fascinating to watch that. I think the thing, when it comes to NVIDIA, my God, they are a GPU juggernaut. I mean, let's face it, that company is just a ton. They're the chipzilla of GPUs. Not that AMD isn't. AMD does a lot of things. They do a lot of things really well. But when it comes to cutting edge, bleeding edge GPU technology, and when you think about, ray tracing and tensor cores and RT cores and all that stuff, and the absolute foothold that they have in the data center for machine learning with GPUs, I mean, they're just a force. So it's going to be fascinating to watch how, this all reacts in the channel when it comes out for consumers, for product offerings in the market. It's going to be just fun to watch. We're going to be busy as hell probably second half of this year, dude.
Yeah, what else is new?
Right? No rest for the wicked or the weary or something like that.
Dude, I think my face looks 10 years older after this last 6 months, man. I got to slow my ass down.
No, yeah. Well, you gotta take a deep breath. You gotta realize there's only so many hours in the day, and sometimes you don't do everything that you say you can do. It's it's a balance. It's a delicate balance. This world of tech, we have to juggle many balls and keep the plates spinning in the air.
He said
and
juggle balls.
I did. There it is. I set you up.
I knew you would do it at some point.
I did say juggle balls. Hey, I don't know why I'm not finding this. I can put a link in the chat because I can go to the admin and do it, but I'm not finding the link for the Lenovo CES holiday giveaway. I'm going to drop in the chat right now because I just pulled out of our CMS. I know it's live. I'm not seeing it on the front page, though. But we have winners of Lenovo stuff from our giveaway, our CES 2020 giveaway, right?
Why is that not showing up?
I
do. And I had already done what we need to do in the CMS to make that show up. But yeah, so did you
clear cache,
Chris? I just hit that button, so don't hit it again.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did. We picked the winners. Gleam, we use a service that randomly picks the winners. But yeah, we finally got the post up, so the people that won know they won. And yeah, so now that I don't have the post let me get the post in front of me so I get their names right. That would probably be the smart thing to do, right? So yeah, we were giving this past holiday season and through CES, Lenovo partnered up with us to give away some really cool stuff. We had a ThinkPad X1 Yoga 4th gen, a really cool Lenovo smart display, and their smart clock. And we finally picked the winners. Jason P won the awesome ThinkPad. Lucinda B won the smart display, and David P won the smart clock. So I believe 2 of them have already wrote in. I tweeted everybody earlier today, but yeah, we are coming off a string of really nice giveaways, 2 monstrous gaming PCs, and then all this awesome stuff from Lenovo. Was a really good holiday season to commemorate our 20th anniversary. We're now in our 21st year, I guess, since it's
my God.
My God, right? What the hell is going on? This is horrible.
No, it's great. It's just that we're old now. It's like ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was craziness. But yeah, man. So good stuff. We hope everyone that won. We hope you really enjoy it, and obviously a huge thank you to Lenovo. We really appreciate this kind of support. It's great to give back to all our readers and the community, and for Lenovo to support us like that is just awesome. So thank you to everybody and all the winners. Congratulations.
Yeah, man, and that's well said. Thank you to Lenovo and thank you to the OEMs that work with us during the year. Lenovo, they're great partners. They step up every year and they sponsor us to go to CES. You'll see, CES coverage sponsored by Lenovo on the website, and then they also sponsor this giveaway every year around the same time frame. To offer presents for good girls and boys in the tech space and the enthusiast sector. So it's really great to have this stuff and the support from the OEMs, because that's what makes our community great, right? We can help connect the OEMs with the readers and and make a bigger community as a result of that, all in having fun with the tech and learning about it and hopefully appreciating it in your own domicile if you're a winner. That's a beautiful thing. So yeah, ThinkPads and smart displays and smart clocks. I've got a smart display here. They're pretty cool. It's interesting technology if you're the type that needs to ask for recipes from Google Assistant and things like that. I think you'll find them pretty useful. And of course, ThinkPad X1. I run an X1 Carbon as my daily driver, and just because the keyboard is so awesome. And I have an HDR display on the latest version I have. It's a 6th gen Carbon, and that's the X1 Yoga. That's got the 360-degree hinge, but it's pretty close to what I run for my daily driver. Good machine, real workhorse. You will enjoy it for sure. And more importantly, coming up, we will have another giveaway soon. Right, Marco?
Yes, I want to build something. So let's figure out a way for me to build something for everybody. I got some new camera gear too that I want to use for some videos. So let's build something soon.
Yeah, we could configure an ultimate gaming rig. Maybe we do something that's like, platform be damned, GPU, CPU be damned. We just want the most ultimate everything. Could we do that?
I would like to do that. If we get the support, sure. We have Chronic Sinner Z asking us to give away one of those 49-inch Samsung displays. Start tweeting Samsung. Tell them that you want them to sponsor us. So we would gladly give one of those away. But yeah, we'll see what we can do. We've given away lots of cool stuff. If we get some support from some partners, I think we can build something killer. If it's not the absolute top end, I'm sure it'll be awesome anyway.
There you go. There you go. So stop by the site, HotHardware.com, where you'll find us on the web. We'll always be, running. Usually every month we'll be giving away something, if not every like 6 weeks. We try and hit it every month. So HotHardware.com, where you can find us on the web, Twitter.com/HotHardware, YouTube.com/HotHardware, where you're hopefully watching this now. Hit thumbs up, subscribe. Facebook, we're there too. We're everywhere. Hang with us. And we'll hopefully see you here again next week. Wednesdays at 5:30 is when we try and hit this, unless we're traveling, chasing OEMs around the countryside. But with that, I will bid you adieu and thank everybody for stopping by.